All right. As I mentioned going into the break, the House just moments ago approved a measure that would extend the Obamacare COVID-era subsidies for 3 years. Now, this was passed primarily by Democrats. Now, this was we've been talking about this over the last, actually going into the Christmas break. There was a discharge petition that was put forward. We had a handful of Republicans join that, but in this vote, 17, if my numbers are right, 17 Republicans joined with the Democrats to approve this measure. Now it goes to the Senate. Unlikely it's going to move from there. Joining me now to talk more about this, to give us the latest, Congressman Dr. Andy Harris, who is the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, also a member of the House Appropriations Committee. He is also a doctor, and he co-chairs the GOP Doctors Caucus. Dr. Andy Harris, thanks so much for joining us. Give us the latest.
Good to be with you, Tony. Well, yeah, I mean, the 17 Republicans did vote to send that over to the Senate, but the Senate's not going to take it up because they already tried to take up the identical measure before the holiday, and it failed. It failed to gain cloture, is technical term. So I'm sure John Thune's not going to waste Senate time on bringing up the exact same measure that failed once in the Senate.
Now, there's been some efforts by Republicans and let me just say at the outset, I've said this before, people need to know, no Republican to date has ever voted for Obamacare. This is the first time we've actually had them vote for these subsidies. Republicans have never voted for these subsidies, never voted for the underlying measure. There was conversations, and correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman Harris, but my understanding in talking with members, there was some discussion about temporary extensions while the underlying health care system is being worked on in terms of the making this maybe private driven through health care savings accounts. But part of those discussions was that Hyde would have to be applied to any extension. That's what the Republicans said. Democrats said non-starter.
That's absolutely right. And the bottom line is that Hyde protections were not in the original Obamacare bill for obvious reasons. It was passed by Democrats, and there's been a resistance to put it in. The rumor circulates, well, there are Hyde-like protections, or it's subject somehow to Hyde. It's not. Obamacare needs a Hyde protection, and there are a lot of Republicans, myself included, who feel that if we open up Obamacare in any way, shape, or form, we should add Hyde protections to Obamacare, and that's why I think this is going nowhere. Look, if the Democrats were serious about extending these, the COVID era, what we call Biden bonuses, these tax credits, then they should be willing to add Hyde protection. But that's how truly extremist they are, that they actually they want public funding for abortion coverage, even though a clear majority of Americans don't think that government funds should be spent on abortion.
57% of Americans do not believe taxpayers should be forced. That's all Americans, all American voters. When you look at Republicans, it's about 67%, if I'm not mistaken, the last poll, 67% of Republicans. So this is a red line for Republicans in that they're not forced to fund abortion. Again, going back to this scenario, Congressman Harris, Republicans, I thought, were pretty generous in saying we will extend this temporarily while we fix the underlying problem of the Unaffordable Care Act. But for us to vote for this, which we've never voted for before, we'll vote for it, but you have to protect the unborn. I mean, that sounds like a pretty generous offer on behalf of the Republicans.
That's absolutely right, and that's the way legislation should work. Every party is going to give a little bit, but the Democrats, again, adhering to an extremist position, which is that insisting on public funding for Obamacare subsidies, even though they cover abortion. I mean, the bottom line is it's just a non-starter. So again, we thought, and again, it was going to be part of a larger package, but without Hyde amendments, it's just not going anywhere.
Okay, so let's talk about now. Congressman Harris, the House Freedom Caucus has a plan for health care. Now that this, we've got all this, hopefully this noise will go away because they realize it's not going anywhere. Tell us about what the House Freedom Caucus is putting forward.
So that's right. So we think that that every American should be able to pick or choose the health care the health care insurance that they want, or the health care that they want. They're not equivalent. So we think that some of the the faith ministries that have health care sharing, we think those should be a completely allowed choice for Americans. We think that every American should have a health savings account or an equivalent into which their employer or they can put money. It's tax-free, and they can choose, again, if they want to go to a health sharing ministry for their health care, that they can do that. If they want to go to an association health plan, they can do that. If they want to go to Obamacare, they can do that. But it's paid, but they make the choice, and we have many choices available. We think that's what Americans want. They want to be able to spend their own dollars in a health savings account. And again, employers can put it in, small businesses can put it in, and then they go into a marketplace that includes many more choices than just Obamacare, which is a very expensive marketplace if you don't have huge federal subsidies.
And I think these health savings accounts can also be structured in such a way to encourage healthy choices, so that because you're controlling it yourself, the money's coming in there, and that we can encourage good behavior in terms of, exercise, dieting, all of these things that lead to healthy outcomes. I think when people realize that they're paying for it and the money's coming out of their pocket indirectly through these health savings accounts, it could prompt healthier living and choices.
That's absolutely right. In fact, Mr. Burleson, one of our representatives in the Freedom Caucus, has suggested that once you have enough in your health savings account, you've bought your insurance plan, you have enough to cover your deductible, you can use the rest of the money for healthy food. I mean, again, it just makes sense that we return the ability of people to actually preserve their health, not just treat their disease out of health. I
mean, you can pay for your health care, your health club membership, other things that lead to healthy lifestyles. All right, we just have a minute left. Appropriations, January 30th deadline to avoid a shutdown. Where do we stand?
Well, we passed another package of 3 bills today, but Tony, to be honest with you, the 6 bills we've passed so far have been the easier ones. We have 2 more weeks to pass the other 6. I'm just not sure it's going to get done. We're going to try, and if not, then we might have to do a continuing resolution. And again, the new appropriation season basically is already starting in a couple of weeks, so we should just do a continuing resolution to the end of the year. But I'm hoping that we can negotiate a few more of the bills before the January 30th deadline.
But there is movement. It looks like these atrophied muscles of appropriations are starting to come back.
That's absolutely right, because we've got 6 across the desk that weren't part of omnibus, and today we actually voted on the components separately, and then recombine them. The next step is just vote on them separately and keep them separate.
All right, Congressman Andy Harris, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us.